Liberalism is a difficult and complicated term in ordinary political discourse and in political philosophy. Sometimes the best way to understand a difficult term is contrastively. Try to understand what liberalism is by understanding what it isn't. One important contrast with liberalism is with conservatism classically understood. Liberals, as the name suggests, are committed to the value of individual liberty. So understood, liberalism is a great big tent, but it's not an all-encompassing tent. Classical conservatives stand outside it. Classical conservatives think that it's very important to honor and carry on tradition. Perhaps the best way to get at the contrast between liberalism, as I've described it so far, and classical conservatives is a reference to that great Catholic conservative G.K. Chesterton, who said he was a great believer in democracy, but he believed in the democracy of the dead. It's not just the sentiments of the living or the preferences of the living that should determine how we live, but so too the preferences of the many who preceded us and who've built up a tradition that he thinks we share. And perhaps the greatest theoretical exponent of conservatism so understood is the great English thinker and politician Edmund Burke. So liberalism, broadly understood, is a commitment to individual liberty and a rejection of the claims, or at least the unthinking claims, of tradition. I think it was Pope John Paul II who said in one of his encyclicals that Catholicism doesn't mandate a philosophical system. And Catholicism is a tradition, a body of convictions, a creed, a long tradition of practice, a church. It's not a school of philosophy. And over the centuries, many philosophical schools have been thought, many philosophical systems have been thought compatible with Catholicism. My own view is that liberalism is in some ways compatible with them, and that the interaction between Catholicism and liberalism in recent centuries has been extremely important. One of the great events in the church in my lifetime, though not in the lifetimes of any of my students, I don't think, is the Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council, the Catholic Church, produced a number of documents that revivified the church, brought it into the modern world. One of those is a document called Dignitatis Humanae, known as the Declaration on Religious Freedom, in which the Catholic Church accepted officially and on a principled basis the doctrine of religious toleration. For a long time, the church had taught that liberalism was a mistake, that religious toleration was a mistake, that the state to be preferred was a Catholic state. And there's a sad history of persecution associated with many of the Christian churches, including Catholicism. At Vatican II, that changed officially when the church accepted religious freedom on a principled basis. The long story of how Dignitatis Humanae came to be adopted at the Second Vatican Council could not, I think, be told without devoting lengthy chapters to the experience of Catholics in America. Catholics came to America in large numbers during the great 19th century immigrations. They initially faced bigotry and prejudice when they were here, but they flourished, the American church flourished, and it became apparent that religious freedom was good for Catholicism, that Catholicism could flourish under it, that Catholicism didn't need the support of a Catholic state in order to flourish. That experience, crystallized in the writings of the great American Jesuit John Courtney Murray, helped to convince the Council Fathers, I think, that religious freedom ought to be accepted, and ought to be accepted in a principled way, and that's one of the great outcomes of Vatican II. So I think liberalism, or American-style liberalism, understood as giving a special place to liberty of conscience, has had an important place in the development of Catholic Church doctrine. And if that doesn't argue for some kind of compatibility between Catholicism and liberalism, I don't see what else could.